During a snowy age of war, powerful samurai generals fought for supremacy. Amid the chaos, one man has dedicated himself entirely to the battlefield. A lone warrior stands amid a ring of his fallen foes. Dying, a soldier spots a monster in front of him and frantically warns his comrades to run. Coolly, the warrior apologizes to the man for prolonging his suffering. Two more soldiers rush forward, one screaming in terror while the other shouts a challenge. His inner voice reveals a central belief that a samurai never retreats. Moving in a deadly blur, he takes on and cuts down several opponents at once. His sole purpose is to seek out and fight the strongest warriors to the death. His next target is an enemy general flanked by a personal guard. Shouting with determination, he tells his allies he has captured the commander. From horseback, an allied commander orders his troops to follow the mercenary. The mercenary, now wielding two katanas, leaps forward with a fierce, joyful grin. Another officer rallies the troops, urging them not to falter or let the attack weaken. Focused, the warrior's face is a mask of determination as he carves a path forward. Knocking down anyone in his path, he bluntly orders them to move aside. He leaps over a fallen horse and rider, his eyes fixed on his objective. Landing on a discarded sword, he uses it as a springboard and launches himself high. An older soldier spots his target, the enemy general's head. Launching through the air, he heads straight for the mounted general. The general reacts immediately, pivots his horse, and meets the airborne assault with his spear. He recognizes the mercenary's skilled deflection and sees him as a worthy challenge. Shouting on guard, the general begins the deadly duel. Focused and intense, the mercenary parries a powerful blow. Their weapons collide in the snow as his twin blades meet the general's heavy spear. Dropping low under a wide swing, he feels the blow whip his hair. He narrows his eyes and sees what he thinks is an opening in the general's defense. The general pivots, preparing a powerful, decisive counterattack. Roaring with triumph, he announces the mercenary's head is his now. Surprised, the mercenary sees the general block his blade with an armored forearm. The general's grunts had successfully trapped one of the mercenary swords. A confident, knowing smile crosses the mercenary's face, unfazed by the trap. In a flash, he twists and lifts his second katana. A single stroke slices cleanly through the general's neck, sending his head flying into the air. The general's severed head thinks about the rare pleasure of a truly serious fight. Over the fallen body, the mercenary says goodbye to the unknown warrior, preparing to carry the general's head back as proof of his hard-won victory. Behind them, an allied archer quietly knocks an arrow as a new threat emerges. His comrades tend the wounded, and one of them questions the strange nature of mercenaries. The mercenary lets out a soft ha, a sound of satisfaction and completion. A volley of arrows pierces his body, catching him completely by surprise. The new commander calmly says it's nothing personal, but he must die. The commander says two heads will make a fitting tribute to his lord. Instead of pain, the mercenary shows only a simple, curious look of surprise. Roaring with pure joy, he says this is why he loves being a mercenary. Unmoved by his reaction, the enemy commander orders his archers to fire again. Badly wounded, the mercenary launches into a final desperate sprint. One arrow flies straight at his head to deliver the final blow. His life was defined by combat, so he always expected to die on the battlefield. Closing in fast, the arrow seems to seal his fate as he runs toward his end. An impossible glowing wheel of energy forms at his feet and deflects the arrows. The traitorous commander watches the strange phenomenon in complete disbelief. A massive gust of wind rips across the battlefield, obscuring it with a swirl of snow. The archers look around in confusion, unsure what happened to their target. Searchers look for him, but find only a single arrow lodged in a nearby tree. As the warrior's consciousness drifts, his war-torn face becomes calm and unscarred. His eyes open, his gaze now clear, youthful, and full of life. Naked and alone, he sits in a vast, featureless white void. Surrounded by the endless expanse, he quietly wonders about this strange place. His first thoughts turn to battle, searching for his enemies and his position. Examining his body, deep shock crosses his face. He can hardly believe his body has been restored to a younger state. Soft and steady, a female voice explains the transformation is her gift to him. Turning, he sees an ethereal woman who says she has restored his body to its prime. Clearing her throat, she prepares to introduce herself formally to the warrior. With a polite greeting, she introduces herself as the goddess in charge of reincarnation. The warrior watches, his expression detached and unmoved by her presence. Turning his back on her, he prompts an indignant outburst from the surprised goddess. Pointing at him with an angry face, she demands that he wait and listen. Stomping her foot, she insists she is a goddess and deserves respect. Cutting her off, he bluntly asks whether he is dead and says it's a mistake. Taken aback by his words, the goddess asks what he means by mistake. His fate was sealed long ago, he explains, and it wasn't meant to turn out like this. The goddess is briefly flustered by his offhand compliment, calling her a pretty goddess. She admits he learns fast as magical energy swirls around her hand. A large ornate book appears in her hands as she gets ready to explain his fate. She confirms his countless killings guaranteed him a one-way trip to hell. The warrior holds on to her keyword, trying to understand what it means to be summoned. A serene, knowing smile from the goddess confirms his question. She brushes off the process details as too complicated for him to understand. Hovering above a massive planet, she says she watches over a beautiful world. She reveals a problem has come up there that needs a strong warrior. Looking him in the eye, she winks and says this is where he comes in. For the first time, she calls him Rokiro. Rokiro refuses her offer outright before she can finish explaining the situation. He says her world is not his concern and that she interrupted his life's purpose. Leaning in close, he says menacingly that she would be barefoot if she were a man. Horrified, the goddess pictures a cartoon bear chasing and eating her. Brushing her off, he tells her he doesn't hurt women as she collapses in relief. When he starts to walk away, she pleads with him to wait. Trying a new tactic, she asks if he would be interested in stronger opponents. Intrigued, he pauses as she describes the powerful, unique beings in her world. She describes demonic creatures and people who possess truly monstrous strength. Her vivid account portrays warriors who split the earth and defy understanding. Rokiro finally shows interest and asks what she is talking about. A slow, predatory smirk spreads across his face as he asks why she hadn't mentioned it sooner. Watching, the goddess feels a bead of sweat on her temple and realizes her gamble has paid off. Fully engaged, he asks her to explain the problem she needs him to solve. Monsters are multiplying uncontrollably, and she needs him to stop them. The smirk turns into a grin as he says killing monsters is his specialty. Eyes closed in concentration, the goddess prepares to transfer Rokiro. A close-up reveals her expression, now carrying a faint worry. She then expresses concern and asks whether he is truly sure about this. He looks up confidently and asks if she still wants his help anyway. With wide, anxious eyes, she tries to push away her growing fears. An intense gaze accompanies his harsh survival philosophy. A swirl of energy takes him, leaving her completely alone. She keeps trying to convince herself he is the right choice. His cold, ruthless eyes flash in her mind, and she fears she may have just unleashed a monster. Alone in the void, her decision leaves her speechless. A detailed magical circle radiates power in a quiet forest clearing. Brilliant light erupts from the circle and lights the landscape. Pure ethereal light begins to form a hand out of nothing. Rokiro emerges into the clearing, wearing only a simple loincloth. He looks around and realizes he has arrived in the goddess's world. In the woods, he watches a clear river flowing by. He looks up at the bright, cloud-filled sky of this new world. Surveying the distant green mountains on the horizon, he looks interested. Hands on his hips, he approves of his surroundings. A wry smirk crosses his face as he sizes up his lack of gear. His first move is to find the nearest town. Suddenly, his senses snap to full alert, and he freezes. Smelling blood, he realizes an attack is underway and goes to check. Bursting into a determined run, he rushes to see the monsters himself. At the scene, he finds wolf-like monsters standing over a fallen human. Calmly, he stands and surveys the carnage before him. A wild, joyful grin takes over his face when he spots a dog. He laughs heartily, finding the club-wielding creature both amusing and interesting. A hooded figure peers over the edge of a rough wooden barricade. The survivor urgently shouts for him to stop laughing and help them. The wolf creatures turn and fix a menacing gaze on him. He stays perfectly calm as two monsters move in to surround him. Cracking his knuckles, he shrugs them off as a pack of feisty mutts. Dodging the club, he lands a powerful kick to the monster's face. Snatching the club, he brutally smashes its owner's skull. Dropping into a low, smooth crouch, he readies himself for the next attack. An open palm strike lands, and the monster's head explodes. The creature's final fall ended the brief, brutal fight. Kneeling over the corpse, he expresses disappointment in their lack of strength. Turning to the survivor, he says he will borrow their clothes. Impressed, the hooded figure says his performance matched her expectations. The figure pulls back their hood, revealing a face he recognizes. The goddess admitted she was worried and went to find him. A transition panel shows the forest canopy beneath a clear, bright sky. Dressed, he thanks Lyra for her compliment on his rugged new outfit. Turning, he says he'll head to the nearest town. Lyra cheerfully confirms she'll come and admits she doesn't know the way. A sideways glance shows he's confused by her honest admission. A genuine smile spreads across his face as he says he's enjoying it. Lyra studies him with a serious, thoughtful look, then her face softens into a gentle smile as she agrees. Walking together, she says her name is Lyra and makes a request. At the battle site, a slain wolf-like creature lies motionless. Dark energy forms a vortex that begins to swirl inside the creature's chest. Crushed, the monster's head begins to reform violently. Its glazed-over eyes suddenly snap open in shock. A clawed foot digs into the earth as the creature pushes itself up. Reborn, the monster stands as a much more menacing, shadowy figure. A close-up shows its mangled, grotesque face and hollow eye sockets. Oblivious to the creature's dark rebirth, Lyra hums a cheerful tune. An introductory panel names Rokiro, a samurai-turned-mercenary. The story explains he was reincarnated to fight growing monsters. Rokiro looks out at the royal capital, his ambitious new destination. They stand before the towering stone walls, finally here. His admiration for the fortifications draws Lyra's nervous disapproval. On the ramparts, a guard shouts down, ordering them to surrender. Heavy armored boots of the guards come toward them along the path. Two guards stand in their way at the towering city gate. A guard calls them suspicious and directs them to the guard station. Angry, the guard accuses Rokiro of threatening a beautiful young woman. A calm new voice tells them not to make a scene. The newcomer says their job is to keep the city safe. Captain Lyon Cartwright introduces himself, giving a suspicious, probing smile. At the gate, two sides face each other in a tense standoff. Rokiro stays stoic and unreadable during the confrontation. Lyon watches him with a slight, confident, knowing smile. Smiling, Lyon readily agrees to their simple request. Rokiro says he only wants to see the capital and will answer questions quickly. Lyon motions for them to follow him to a nearby checkpoint. Inside, Lyon says Lyra is waiting outside, while Rokiro asks where she is. Lyon notices Lyra is a new adventurer, unlike Rokiro. Rokiro says he just met Lyra and knows nothing about her situation. Lyon opens the interrogation by asking about Rokiro's distant homeland. Lyon admits he's never heard of the distant country Hinamoto. Introducing himself as simply Rokiro, he is here to kill monsters. Rokiro confirms he was a mercenary in a place where war was profitable. Lyon's eyes narrow as he realizes money isn't the real reason. Rokiro reveals that his true goal is to find strong opponents to face. Lyon seems to understand and starts writing down the information. He agrees to issue a temporary ID under specific conditions. He tells Rokiro to go to the Adventurers Guild before the ID expires. He hands over a sealed document detailing the specific conditions. Rokiro is about to leave when Lyon stops him for one last word. Lyon asks him not to cause any trouble in the city. With his friendly demeanor gone, he warns he hates pointless killing. He gives one last look and formally welcomes Rokiro to the royal capital. Outside, Lyra greets him with a cheerful wave and a lively call. Relieved, Lyra teases him for being a battle maniac. An elderly man walks up and asks if he is the man named Rokiro. The man introduces himself as Keith, the guild master of the Adventurers Guild. Rokiro, a dark-haired man, calmly introduces himself with a smiling blonde woman beside him. An elderly man with glasses thanks Rokiro for looking after Lyra. Noting the late hour, he politely suggests they finish their business at the guild later. Keith watches thoughtfully as the two companions walk away down the street. Turning to Captain Lyon, he notes how dejected the captain looks. Lyon speaks in frustration, convinced Rokiro had deliberately tested his authority. Keith thinks Rokiro seemed like a gentleman, but seriously doubts his true motives. Lyon gives his final assessment with a grim expression, calling Rokiro a bloodthirsty beast. Now that they're on their own, Lyra says the first priority is finding a place to stay. Rokiro stops at a clothing shop, and their search is immediately sidetracked. Lyra, who had walked ahead, turns back with a confused look. Inside the shop, Rokiro points at a kimono-like robe and asks the shopkeeper if it is for sale. The shopkeeper says the rare old garment draws almost no customers. Rokiro's expression reveals a sincere, deep interest in the unique garment. He says he'll take it and asks the price. Amused, the shopkeeper smiles at his suggestion that he could pay on credit. Then she surprises them both by saying they do not have to pay. Smiling kindly, she insists he wear it. Lyra gasps in awe as Rokiro starts trying on the robe. Stepping out, the simple garment looks striking and picturesque on his frame. The close-up shows Lyra completely captivated by the sight, a soft blush on her cheeks. Rokiro never expected to find an item like this in this world. Finding a katana crosses his mind, but Lyra reminds him they don't have the money. She says with a playful smile that he is just like a child. They arrive at a building marked by a large wooden sword and shield. Entering the shop, Rokiro notes the impressive array of weapons and armor. Immediately, he approaches the clerk and asks whether they carry katanas. Since the clerk doesn't know the term, Rokiro decides to look through their wares. A second employee wearing a turbine scoffs and mutters disdainfully about the plebs. Rokiro inspects the sword and finds it disappointingly light, like a toy. An intricate pattern on the blade's surface catches his interest. Lyra cheerfully recognizes the design as a magic crest. She calls it a technique for channeling magical power through a weapon. The turbaned employee tells his coworker to remove the customers who have no money. The head clerk walks over and politely interrupts their browsing. He apologizes and tells them they don't have what Rokiro needs. Just as they're about to leave, Rokiro's expression sharpens with a sudden idea. Lyra startles when he suddenly stops her from leaving. Now he stands purposefully before a barrel of assorted cheap weapons. Now serious, he asks for something to be prepared for a test cut. He grips the hilt of the plain, unadorned longsword he chose. Holding the plain, sturdy sword, he smiles with quiet confidence. The clerk dismisses the weapon as cheap junk, but agrees to the request. He lifts an ornate breastplate set on a heavy wooden stand. He explains that it's special, general-purpose armor used for testing. Wearing turbans, the employees smirk, confident the cheap sword won't even scratch their best armor. He is eager to be satisfied by shaming the annoying poor customer. Rokiro narrows his eyes into thin slits, focused and steady as he prepares to strike. Two shopkeepers watch him with smug, condescending looks, waiting for him to fail. With one stunning swing, Rokiro cuts the armor cleanly in two. Pure, wide-eyed astonishment spread across Lyra's face at the impossible feat. Rokiro calmly examines the sword's hilt and says he has found it. He shows a small metal token, stamped with the Greek letter phi. Still denying it, the clerk laughs nervously and says the cheap sword couldn't have cut it. Rokiro takes back the proven sword from the stunned, trembling clerk. He tells them he won't be coming back to the shop and says goodbye. Trying to save face, the clerk mutters that they don't want the plebs back anyway. His female colleague volunteers to handle the destroyed armor stand. With a gesture toward it, the split stand finally collapses into pieces. Both shopkeepers stand frozen in shock, unable to accept what they saw. Lyra suggests they rest as they leave the shop, but Rokiro says their work isn't finished. He reminds her he needs a proper weapon to carry out his duty to slay monsters. Holding up the token, he says they will make one if none can be found. Looking out over the city, they are gay and focused on a new destination. Far off, dark smoke rises from several tall chimneys. Lyra's eyes widen in a gasp as she realizes his plan. Arriving at the blacksmith's district, they find a bustling quarter filled with forges. Rokiro explains that most weapons have the maker's name or mark engraved on them. Smiling, he points ahead after spotting the sign he'd been looking for. A small rustic forge stands before them, marked with a familiar symbol. Rokiro announces they have entered the dimly lit, stone-walled workshop. A young woman in a heavy metal visor looks up from her work. She lifts her visor wearily and asks if they have returned, assuming they want money. Rokiro, surprised, admits he mistook the small smith for a child. Lyra quickly corrects him, explaining she is a dwarf and a master craftswoman. She introduces them cheerfully and asks if the smith can make a weapon for them. The dwarven blacksmith studies them with a curious, surprised expression. Visibly moved, she realizes she has a new customer after a very long time. Smiling warmly, Pina introduces herself as the blacksmith. Rokiro lifts one of her swords and murmurs his approval of its quality. He admires her flawless craftsmanship, pointing out the perfect sharpness and balance. Pina and Lyra exchange a pleased smile at his sincere praise. He asks for a single-edged sword with a curved blade. A loud bang and a taunting voice at the door abruptly interrupt their discussion. The voice keeps demanding to be let in, while Lyra watches with concern. The doors smashed open with a deafening crash, revealing 3 thugs. Rokiro and Pina harden their expressions at the violent, unwelcome intrusion. The intruders announced they were forcing their way inside. The muscular leader sneers, shoves Lyra aside, and tells her to move. He aggressively demands that Pina repay an old debt with illegal interest. Furious at her refusal, he lifts his hand to hit her. Rokiro's hand darts out and stops the thug's arm before the blow lands. A quick, powerful kick knocks the leader sprawling onto the stone floor. The fallen man and his cronies snarl threats and prepare to retaliate against Rokiro. Rokiro quietly remembers being clearly told to stay out of trouble. Lyra steps forward, energy radiating from her as she says their actions are in self-defense. Pronouncing judgment with divine authority, she orders Rokiro to beat the men until they are half dead. Rokiro finds her brutal order impossible as 2 thugs charge him. Effortlessly, he catches a wooden club swung straight at his face. Both thugs lunge forward at once, one reaching for his throat. A close-up shows a finger gently poking a sweating man directly on the forehead. Rokiro leaps gracefully through the air, aiming precisely at the glabella. One simple tap sends the first thug flying backward, stunned by how quickly he was defeated. In a single smooth move, he takes down a second thug, and the club falls from his hand. Now sitting on the floor, the leader snarls a curse at his mysterious attacker. The thug leader springs to his feet and lunges at the stoic Rokiro with a knife. Rokiro steps forward deliberately to meet the incoming attack. He hits the man's solar plexus, his expression remaining calm through the attack. The thug's face twists in pain as Rokiro explains the body's vital points. He calmly explains how a light attack can immobilize an opponent. Smiling confidently, he boasts about his samurai skills in both capturing and killing. He asked Lyra what to do with the defeated men and whether they should be hanged. Lyra closes her eyes and prepares to show her power. She casts a healing spell that revives one of the unconscious thugs in a soft magical glow. Revived men stare in terror as she addresses them directly. Lyra warns them that if they threaten Pina again, the consequences will be severe. She orders them to warn others as they flee the workshop in a panic. The trio watches the thugs walk away, and Lyra says the matter is settled. Pina notes that people like that exist everywhere and hopes they have learned their lesson. She turns to her rescuers and thanks them sincerely. The heavy blacksmith hammer slips from her hands and clatters loudly to the floor. Renewed in determination, Pina vows to forge for them the finest curved sword ever made. Rokiro and Lyra share a pleased, satisfied smile at her promise. From above, the 2 defeated thugs stagger away from the workshop. They stormed into the room, one of them kicking the door open in frustration at being underestimated. Their boss asked about the commotion and whether they had managed to collect the money. Jordani, the refined boss, decides to handle the matter himself. The next morning, Lyra is completely exhausted from her training session. She says she can't relax while Pina sketches and Rokiro spars nonstop. Shirtless Rokiro playfully teases Lyra about being exhausted after a short training session. Questioning Pina about the men from yesterday, he heard Lyra retort about the long training. Pina says they were simply thugs from a group called the Jordani family. Then she hands Rokiro a folded piece of paper. Pina gives him a list of materials for his katana and tells him to gather plenty. A towering building with a giant tusk is revealed to be the Jordani headquarters. Inside the Adventurers Guild, Giselle, a bunny-eared receptionist, welcomes them. The guild hall buzzes with adventurers. Rokiro and Lyra soak up the guild's energetic atmosphere, impressed by its liveliness. Giselle meets them at the reception desk and offers to help. One bunny ear twitches slightly as she listens. Lyra asks to have Rokiro registered as an adventurer, and Giselle agrees. Rokiro is eager to enter a dungeon and fight monsters. Giselle asks if they're already in a party, and they say no. She apologizes and says new adventurers cannot go on dungeon attacks alone. Giselle explains the rank tiers from wood to iron required for solo entry. Sighing, Lyra is frustrated by the bureaucratic hurdle of ranks. She says she's worried about how many years it might take to pass the test. Giselle sees their dilemma and offers to introduce them at a party. Smiling brightly, she says she knows an iron-ranked party that is recruiting. A vast forested landscape stretches beneath imposing cliffs. Rokiro and Lyra stroll along a dirt path through the woods. Lyra mutters that they were duped and complains about the supposed recruitment. Fuming, she says they are only porters and blames the receptionist's jealousy. A voice behind them apologizes to both. Mika, a young woman, thanks them for coming on short notice. Joe, a young man with dark hair, introduces himself as well. Liam, a calm blonde man, sends his greetings too. They thank Rokiro and Lyra and call them lifesavers. Joe says cheerfully that they're close to the dungeon entrance and urges the group forward. A shadowed archway marks the entrance to the forest dungeon. Joe boasts about his own dungeon experience while asking Lyra if she has ever been in one. Giving a confident thumbs up, he tells her she can learn a lot from them. Smiling, Lyra raises a water skin in thanks. Nervously, she asks if they can pause for a moment before going in. The water skin is knocked from her hand, splashing onto the ground. A well-equipped party arrives, looking down on them and calling them iron-ranked weaklings. The arrogant party leader focuses on Rokiro and Lyra. Her companions dismiss them as incompetent parasites who fantasize about dungeons. The arrogant party walks off, leaving Joe's group furious. At Joe's party, guests complain about the jerks who were promoted to bronze so quickly. He vows they'll show them who's boss later. Furious at being called a parasite, Lyra vows to beat them up. A small robotic companion realizes its goal has suddenly changed. The group enters the dungeon's ancient den of monsters. Deep inside, a mysterious core is said to constantly produce the creatures. Adventurers from every background come here seeking fame and treasure. A vast spiraling chasm marks the dungeon's deep, dangerous abyss. Joe eagerly finishes explaining what a dungeon is. Lyra and Rokiro listen, twitching with amusement. Joe brushes off the lesson, eager to go treasure hunting and find monsters. Rokiro notices movement ahead, signaling the monster's arrival. At the entrance, they see the arrogant group demonstrating combat skills. Two goblins with crude weapons prepare to fight. Joe warns they must act quickly before the goblins call for backup. Mika prepares to cast an inhibition spell. Casting silence, she forms a sphere of magic that blocks sound. Both goblins are caught completely off guard by the sudden unnatural quiet. Seizing the opportunity, Joe and Lamy move forward in a coordinated attack. Joe slams his sword down onto the first goblin while shouting. The initial assault throws the goblins back. A third goblin sneaks up behind Joe and swings an axe at him. Calmly drawing his bow, the party's archer says he won't let it happen. An arrow slips free and strikes the goblin square in the chest mid-flight. Joe is safe now. Let's let out a triumphant cry of all right. Rallying his team, he keeps momentum going and presses their advantage. Suddenly, a horde of horned rabbits charges at them. Joe says he'll flank the charging rabbits to intercept them. At the same time, a swarm of large screeching bats drops down from the ceiling. Lyra unleashes an ultrasound, sending the bats crashing to the ground to block the rabbits' path. Lyra and Rokiro exchange smiles, clearly pleased and impressed by the successful tactic. Rokiro privately admires the party's logical strategy and is especially intrigued by their use of magic. After their victory, the party leader triumphantly orders them to start stripping materials from the corpses. As his companions gather loot, the leader focuses on Rokiro. Then he asked Rokiro whether he wanted to try fighting on his own. Seeing the weak small fry monsters, Rokiro agrees it's a good chance to practice. Setting down his pack, he gets ready to join the fight. Enthusiastically, the leader asks if Rokiro is sure, and Rokiro says yeah. Mika worries about his safety, but Lyra confidently assures her he will be fine. With his second sword drawn, Rokiro's hands find a familiar grip on the hilt. He declares he will make it look easy, but will do it his own way. Goblins cooking stew look up, confused as a lone human approaches. Rokiro strides confidently toward the unsuspecting monsters. His companions worried about his reckless tactics and lack of magical backup. Goblins shift from confusion to aggression as they arm themselves with crude weapons. A monster yelps in surprise, sensing sudden danger. Rokiro digs his boots into the dusty ground as he charges. Moving like a blur, he cuts through the goblin troop with impossible speed. His party members stand frozen, their faces showing shock and disbelief. In an instant, the battle is over, leaving Rokiro standing amid the carnage. Moving with fluid grace, he finishes off the remaining goblins with swift, precise strikes. Clutching a goblin's severed head, he stands alone as the victor. The head falls with a splash into the goblin's own cooking pot. A swarm of bats suddenly swoops down from the ceiling, creating a new threat. Casually, Rokiro picks up a small pebble from the ground. He hurls the tiny projectile with great force and precise aim. The pebble rips through the swarm of bats, shredding them instantly. He watches with a detached, satisfied smirk as their broken bodies fall. A new horde of horned rabbits is charging at him down the corridor. Landing lightly, he stays untouched by their fierce attack. Launching into the air, he twists to set up a counterattack. A calm, knowing smile settles on his lips. Blades flash in a hypnotic dance of death, cutting the rabbits down. A soft sound of satisfaction escapes him after his effortless display. His companions ask what moves he used and whether he is really a beginner. Lyra simply smiles and says he has met her expectations again. The ground shakes and a massive stone arm erupts from the floor behind him. Rokiro turns and sees a colossal figure pulling itself out of the ground. His party raises the alarm about the sudden powerful new threat. Jumping back, he avoids the monster as it fully emerges from the shattered ground. A hulking creature of living metal and rock turns out to be an iron golem. The party wonders why a creature so powerful would show up on an upper floor. Lyra orders Rokiro to fall back, saying they need a bronze-ranked party to fight it. Rokiro refuses to flee and plants his sword firmly in the ground. Leaping into the air, he flies straight at the towering golem. Horrified, Mika screams at him not to confront the powerful monster. Closing in, Rokiro calmly assesses the situation. His blade strikes the golem's arm, showing physical attacks are mostly ineffective but not completely. A powerful blow cracks the golem's metallic hide. A predatory grin spreads across his face when he spots the monster's weakness. His companions, now excited instead of afraid, cheer him on from a safe distance. He leaps high, ready to bring his sword down onto the golem's head. He moves like a whirlwind, cutting through multiple rock golems with joyful ferocity. Faces around the party show a cascade of reactions, from Lyra's joy to Mika's disbelief. After the battle, he utters a single satisfied word. Thrilled, Daichai stands with his arms overflowing with a huge haul of golem materials. He openly dreams of getting new gear and one day challenging the area boss. He sincerely thanks Rokiro for sharing the loot, even though he was the one who defeated the monsters. Rokiro says not to worry, since he got what he needed from the fight. Confident, Daichai suggests they press deeper into the dungeon. Rokiro says they're done, but Lyra points out the monsters will grow stronger. Rokiro eagerly looks forward to facing ogres or snakes. The party reaches the entrance to the middle floor of the forest dungeon. An adventurer spots motionless figures in the vast chamber ahead. Daichai recognizes the fallen adventurers as the bronze-ranked party he saw at the entrance. Staring in shock, he tries to figure out what happened to them. A lone survivor, his face battered and bloodied, gasping for breath. A weak hand twitches on the ground as he struggles to speak. Using his last strength, he points and chokes out a desperate plea asking a monster for help. The group looks confused and doubts the survivor's warning. A dark shape pounces on another adventurer at the top of the stairs. Rokiro drops his relaxed air as his eyes narrow with intense focus. Slamming down with brutal force, the creature crushes its victim beneath its weight. The party reels from the monster's overwhelming power and speed. As the dust settles, a pair of malevolent eyes peers out from the shadows. A massive white-furred wolf beast appears with an ogre clamped in its jaws. With his companions frozen, Rokiro calmly tells everyone to stand back. A predatory smile reappears as he claims the creature as his prey. Gripping his sword, he says he can finally have a little fun. Two fighters stand opposite each other in the vast, silent chamber. His companions ask with concern whether he really plans to fight it. Mika watches with a troubled look as her worry deepens. Lyra identifies the ogre as the middle floor's area boss, a foe no ordinary cobalt could defeat. This is no ordinary cobalt, she realizes, because monsters killing each other is unnatural. She notices a distinctive wound above the creature's right eye. I recall a smaller cobalt with the same injury. A horrifying realization hits her, and her eyes widen in shock. The creature's chest wound seals as it prepares to attack. The monster lunges forward at blinding speed, tearing up the stone floor. The rest of the party stands stunned by the creature's incredible speed. Rokiro's face twists with rage as he demands why his companions are still there. Furious, he yells at them to leave, saying they will only get in his way. Daichai agrees with Rokiro and tells the others they must leave right away. Noticing Lyra hasn't moved, he calls her name, surprised. Daichai urges her to pull back and help treat the injured survivor. Lyra says firmly she will not leave the area. She says she will stay here and watch whatever happens until the end. Rokiro looks back at her, his face unreadable as the monster waits. At last, her companions heed the warning and start to flee the chamber. Rokiro says he's surprised because he thought she had run, and she answers that she's still a goddess. Recognizing her sense of justice, Rokiro repeats his claim in a chilling voice. The monster is his prey. Rokiro draws his blade and charges forward, telling Lyra to watch from a distance. A massive white-furred cobalt lets out a deafening roar, its body ready to attack. In the stone hall, the swordsman and the hulking monster brace for battle. Their first clash is steel against claw, sending sparks flying. Rokiro grimaces as he resists the creature's immense strength. The blow throws him skidding backward across the stone floor. Quickly regaining his footing, he settles into a low crouch, ready for the next move. Pausing briefly, he quietly focuses as he checks his weapon. Grimly, he admits his sword is already taking damage. The monstrous kobold towers over him, ready to press its advantage. Watching from the sidelines, Lyra's eyes widen with concern as she quietly urges him on. Rokiro drops low and slides smoothly under the beast's powerful lunge. A confident smirk crosses his lips as he dodges the attack. In one smooth motion, he slips behind the monster and slashes at its leg. Lyra notices that although Rokiro is faster, his attacks have no effect. Rokiro's intense gaze snaps to something at his side. Confused, Lyra wonders what has caught his attention during the battle. Nearby, a heavily armored but badly wounded survivor groans in pain. Lyra confirms the man is still breathing, despite his injuries. Surprised, she wonders whether Rokiro really cares about the survivor. A sudden thought hits her that his attack might have been a feint to draw the beast away. She immediately dismisses that compassionate notion when she realizes it is not true. The cold truth hits her as she realizes he only wanted his allies out of the way. In the end, he only wanted to enjoy an uninterrupted fight. Clutching its chest, the kobold's wound from Rokiro's blade looks superficial. The monster roars and smashes a nearby stone pillar with its fist. Rokiro turns the attack to his advantage and grabs a large piece of debris. Praising the beast's cleverness, he hints he has a counter strategy. Thick dust and rubble burst outward from the impact. Haze briefly blinds the snarling monster. Rokiro rushes out of the dust cloud in a blur. He says poor visibility favors the smaller fighter. The blade sinks deep into the monster's chest, delivering a final, fatal blow. Elsewhere in the dungeon, Lyra casts a healing spell on the wounded survivor. His face is smeared with grime and blood, and his eyes are haunted by trauma. She tells him he's lucky to be alive. Scoffing at her words, he doubts that mere survival can be called luck. The survivor says the monster's strength was on a whole different level. His eyes widen in terror as he says they are all going to die. Rokiro makes a bold entrance, leaping down from a high ledge. The monster's body is gone, leaving only a pile of rubble in its place. Lyra calls his name, taken aback by how suddenly he appeared. The creature's complete disappearance strikes him as very strange. A new cobalt appears and says it feels no pain from its wound. Rokiro points out that this resilience defies the natural laws of life. Lyra accepts his assessment of the strange situation. Concern clouds her face as she realizes something about the creature. Rokiro confirms her suspicion and says it's the same one he killed earlier. He explains he identified it by its exact scent. Calm and unnerving, he says he will kill it again if it revives. He says the universal law of any age is that the strong devour the weak. The revived cobalt charges forward at terrifying speed. Its arm transforms into a thick, rope-like tendril that lashes through the air. Rokiro lifts his blade to block the unnatural attack. Surprise briefly flashes across his face at the unexpected transformation. His katana shatters on impact with a sharp crack. Lyra cries out in alarm, her eyes widen in shock. It is a broken sword. The blow's force sends him stumbling back, clutching his throat. The monster slams into him and sends him crashing into a stone wall. Lyra worries about her lack of skill and offensive magic as she prepares to act. A guttural laugh echoes from the rubble as Rokiro starts to rise. He snaps at Lyra with a sharp command not to get in his way. He says he can now fight without worrying about breaking a borrowed sword. Confused Cobalt wonders how a human can fight without weapons. Rokiro ducks beneath a furious blow that shatters the stone floor. Inside the beast's guard, he stands with his feet planted firmly. He's getting ready to unleash his true, unarmed fighting style. His hand shoots forward to strike a vulnerable spot on the monster. Lyra realizes with awe that he is aiming strategically at its joints. The precise, powerful strike lands squarely on the Cobalt's wrist. Agonized, the monster howls, its hands shattered and useless. Rokiro grabs the monster's head and prepares to follow up with his attack. Spinning, he delivers a devastating kick to the side of its head. After a graceful landing, he calls the creature a pitiful dog. He admits that fighting with bare hands is painful. This pain, he says, reminds them of their thirst for life. He says this deep fear is the reason they fight. He doubts the point of fighting when there is no risk of death. Leaping onto the creature's back, he prepares to deliver the final blow. A sickening crack rings through the air as he snaps the monster's neck. The battle ends as the hulking kobold collapses to the floor. He says it was quite a workout, while Lyra reacts with disbelief. A strange, dark mist starts seeping from the creature's corpse. Lyra sounds the alarm as the black mist engulfs the fallen monster. When it fades, the body has shrunk, something Rokiro finds very unusual. Lyra wonders whether cases of resurrecting the dead are known in this world. She concludes that kobolds reanimating is definitely not normal. They stand at the rim of the crater, both unsure what is really happening. They rejoin their party of adventurers outside the dungeon. The other adventurers watch with relieved, happy expressions. Rokiro steps up to the group, holding proof of his victory. With a casual wave, he holds the kobold's shrunken, severed head. The party looks back, faces a mix of shock, awe, and confusion. He heads toward the blacksmith's district. He hands the dwarven blacksmith Pina a large pile of monster materials. He asks her to make a prototype and promises to pick it up in a few days. His warm smile shows he is eager to see her craftsmanship. As they leave, Pina watches them and feels her resolve harden. Fierce determination settles on her face as she accepts the challenge. Studying the materials, she repeats his words of anticipation to herself. Pina studies the blueprints for a new weapon in her workshop and vows to do her very best. Lyra stretches happily in the street and says she is relieved to finally have a few days to rest. Giving a playful wink, she lists her priorities as a long bath and a report to the guild. She points decisively and arranges to meet Rokiro at Pina's workshop in 3 days. Rokiro turns and walks alone through a large stone arch into the city. Perched high above the city's rooftops, Rokiro sleeps peacefully in a tree. Lyra soaks in a warm bath with a calm, contented smile. At her forge, Pina works diligently, lifting her visor with a focused look. Calm and peaceful as he rests, he is completely unaware of the chaos to come. 2 days later, Lyra peers out her window and wonders about a distant orange glow. Seated at the table, she expresses hope that the disturbance is nothing serious. Horror hits her as she sees the blacksmith district on fire. Below on the street, a man shouts in panic to warn everyone about the raging fire. Chaos drives citizens to flee, their feet pounding the stone streets in terror. Panic ripples through the crowd as people rush to escape the danger. Amid the chaos, Rokiro runs to Lyra and calls her name urgently. With a grim expression, he confirms her worst fear. The blacksmith district is in flames. Without hesitation, Rokiro sprints toward the disaster, Lyra close behind him. Racing through the ruined courtyard, Lyra stumbles and falls among the debris. After pushing herself back up, she keeps running, panting from the effort. Reaching the fire's source, they stare in horror and disbelief. Lyra presses a hand to her mouth and whispers in disbelief at the devastating sight before them. Confronting the massive inferno, Rokiro cries out Pina's name in a desperate, anguished voice. A monstrous wall of fire engulfs the entire building and lights the night sky. Lyon arrives at the scene, takes command, and orders everyone to put out the fire. Shouting a critical order, he demands they rescue any survivors left inside. A rescue effort begins when men form a line to pass buckets of water. A man suddenly pours a full bucket of water over Rokiro's head. Lyon pulls the stunned Lyra back from the fire's edge. Rokiro, soaked but resolute, charges headfirst into the towering wall of flames. Flames consume everything in their path with an unending hunger for destruction. Later, Rokiro steps out alone from the smoldering skeleton of the workshop. Lyra moves through the wreckage to him, concern in her voice as she asks for Pina. Soot streaking his face, Rokiro says grimly that she either escaped or perished. Lyon steps forward, thanks Rokiro for his cooperation, and expresses surprise at his recklessness. Kneeling in the rubble, Lyon says the garrison will now investigate the cause of the fire. He lists possible causes: carelessness, spontaneous combustion, or deliberate arson. At the mention of arson, Rokiro's face darkens, suspicion flickering in his eyes. Lyon describes the harsh penalties the capital enforces on blacksmiths who start fires. Lyra looks worried, aware of the serious consequences Pina could face if found negligent. He describes severe punishments like banishment or losing business rights. Either way, he concludes, her career as a blacksmith would be over. Rokiro says firmly that if there is a culprit, it is not Pina. After making his point, he turns to leave, interrupting Lyon's investigation. Lyra is surprised by his sudden departure and calls after him in confusion. He asks if she knows where they live, his tone making clear he already has suspects. Walking away, Rokiro quietly reveals that Pina is still alive. The culprits are the Jordani family's thugs, shocking Lyra. He details their cruel trade of kidnapping women and children and holding them as hostages. Lyra studies his hardened profile, feeling the deep anger rising inside him. His fist tightens when he sees they've trampled on Pina's pride. His face is a mask of cold fury. He declares that they are no longer human. The camera moves to the Jordani family's dim, rustic hideout. Inside, Pina needles lie on the floor, bound and held captive by several thugs. A blonde thug towers over her, taunting with a cruel, knowing smirk. He tells her this is what happens when someone challenges the powerful Jordani family. Leader Jordani sits at a table, watching with bored detachment. He rests his chin on his hands and sadistically tells her to cry and scream. Pina looks up, narrowing her eyes into a quiet, defiant glare at her captors. Jordani watches her with cold, aristocratic amusement, waiting for her to break. Another thug grabs her hair and calls her an ugly excuse for a dwarf. She is slammed onto the wooden floor, her cherished belongings clattering beside her. Jordani rises, wondering aloud how important the object she clings to might be. Her eye widens in panic when she realizes he plans to destroy her work. Bending down, he reaches for the cloth-wrapped object on the floor. Scrambling forward on her hands and knees, she pleads with him not to touch it. Clinging to his pant leg, she holds on with an iron grip and refuses to let go. The image of Rokiro waiting for his weapon flashes through her mind and steals her resolve. Eyes blazing with new resolve, she refuses to let go. Jordani looks down and his bored expression shifts to mild, brief surprise. Summoning a desperate burst of strength, Pina bites down hard on the man's leg. Angry, he strikes back with a brutal kick, sending her across the room. Snarling, he calls her a stupid wench and asks if she still doesn't get it. Broken and lying on the floor, she is ordered to listen to her captor's words. He says he can sell her into slavery or keep her as his worker for life. He grabs her chin and forces her to meet his cold, merciless gaze. He declares she is now his property and insists she accept her new reality. 3 thugs tower over the beaten Pina, one wielding a heavy wooden staff. Despite her injuries, Pina lifts her head with a steady, unbroken look of defiance. Grinning, the thug lifts the staff high and tells her to get ready. Clenching her jaw, she squeezes her eyes shut and braces for the inevitable impact. A hand shoots out and grabs the wooden staff moments before it can strike. The thug's cruel pleasure turns to confusion as his attack is mysteriously stopped. A new figure, Rokiro, slams the thug's head into the floor, shattering it. Ordering the thugs to surrender, Lyra faces them, while Rokiro stands by with a deadly, silent intensity. Lying on the floor, Pina looks up at her rescuers, her eyes wide with hope. One of Jordani's men recognizes them as the pair who interfered with them earlier. Jordani finds their arrival convenient and orders his men to take care of them. Lyra gives Rokiro a serious look and tells him to help Pina. The thugs charge with swords drawn, and Rokiro steps forward to meet them. The first strike lands as a crushing punch that sprays blood and teeth. A powerful follow-up kick sends another thug flying over a table. Every move is precise, a whirlwind of controlled, disabling bare-handed strikes. A second fist lands square on a thug's jaw and knocks him out cold. Amid the carnage, Rokiro calmly says he will spare one man. The remaining thugs watch in terror as he says one will survive to testify. With cold eyes, he declares in chilling final terms that he is killing the rest. Lyra rushes to Pina's side through a room littered with defeated thugs. Nailing, she shows deep relief that Pina is safe from her captors. Lyra pulls Pinio back and warns that Rokiro is dangerous when pride is involved. Lyra explains Rokiro reacts intensely when someone's pride is hurt. Bloodied, the Pina listens in silence, her face set in quiet resolve. A dawning understanding shows in her quiet voice as she murmurs Rokiro's name. A sudden flare lights Pina's eyes as she gives an urgent command. Holding his katana, she pleads with him to use it well. Rokiro's eyes move to a sheathed sword on a nearby table. A faint, knowing smile crosses his lips when he sees the weapon. He bolts toward the table at blinding speed. Two thugs move in to cut him off, swords drawn and ready. Instantly, he kicks one man and snatches the katana. Jordani warns Rokiro that winning will not come so easily. Sword still sheathed, Rokiro parries the rapier's thrust. His thumb flicks a hidden catch on the scabbard's hilt. A small object flies out, hits Jordani's hand, and knocks the weapon from his grip. The leader cries out in pain as his elegant rapier clatters to the ground. Rokiro jumps onto a nearby table to take the high ground. Desperate, Jordani shouts for him to wait while trying to regain his footing. A sheathed sword slams down onto Jordani's outstretched arm. A vicious kick to the side of the head lands immediately after the blow. Rokiro now stands over his defeated opponent on the table. He says the bloodied man's name in a cold, detached voice. Vengeance will come for what was foolishly taken away, he declares. Jordani looks up, eyes burning with one last defiant rage. Leaping from the table, Rokiro unleashes his devastating final attack. With all her remaining strength, Pina screams his name and urges him on. Completely focused, he grips the katana, ready to strike. The first style is a graceful but deadly dance of blades. The blow lands, sending a massive spray of blood from Jordani's chest. Lyra and Pina watch the brutal victory, their faces filled with awe and triumph. Landing softly, the warrior completes his attack as the air settles around him. Jordani's body is flung back, a fatal wound gaping across his torso. A single footstep echoes on the floor as the fallen body starts to twitch. Rokiro taunts that this is all his opponent's pride can offer. The dying man weakly insists he warned him it wasn't over. His body starts to twist unnaturally, muscles bulging under his skin. Dark, malevolent energy pulses as his body twists into a horrific form. Lyra shouts a desperate warning, urging Rokiro to get back immediately. Jordani rises as a hulking monster and challenges him to a second round. The creature lunges forward, its huge fist set to crush its target. Rokiro meets the powerful blow with the flat of his katana. The sheer force hurls him backward, gouging deep grooves into the floor. He shouts Lyra's name, his face fixed in grim, focused determination. Lyra and Pina watch, unsure what his sudden plan might be. Her face shows confusion and worry at the turn of events. Rokiro urgently calls her name again and gives a sharp command. He tells her to put her freezing power aside for now. He tells her to go outside and block the entrance completely. Lyra acknowledges the order with a firm, immediate okay. He gives a final stern warning that she should be careful. Outside the building, Lyra tells Pina to stand back to keep her safe. Raising her staff, the orbit at its tip glows with magical energy. A powerful cry brings forth a massive, jagged wall of earth. Intense focus and steady determination mark her expression. This is just like the earlier reanimating cobalts, she says. Her unease deepens as she fears it is not a coincidence. A vast unknown power is stirring in the world, and she realizes it. Inside, a thug cries out in pure terror at the monster. Another screams frantically, urging his comrades to run for their lives. Outside, the trapped men pound in vain on the unyielding earthen wall. Jordani taunts his minions, asking if they are scared of him now. The light thug admits he knows their fate. Rokiro stands ready, his hand on the katana's hilt. Jordani gives his men a stark choice, fight for him or die. The thug leader scrambles toward Rokiro and grabs his arm in desperation. He insists he's innocent, saying he didn't know his boss was a monster. Terror twists his face as he pleads for his life. Rokiro stays impassive while the pathetic man clings to him. Sighing with disgust, he dismisses the man's cowardly plea. All he needs is one living witness, he says calmly. Declaring the charade over, he leaps high into the air. He cuts through the remaining thugs in a blur of controlled violence. Jordani roars in anger when his opponent briefly ignores him. Rokiro dodges a massive punch that smashes the floorboards. Vaulting over the monster's destructive attack, he he moves with remarkable agility. Landing amid the chaos, he keeps up his swift, disabling assault. A fresh cut runs across his face, a small, confident smile on his lips. The last thug makes a desperate attempt to pin the recent arson on Rokiro. To save his life, he promises to testify against Rokiro. Amused by the betrayal, Rokiro accepts the man as the new culprit. A small, horned monster suddenly lunges at him from the side. Without looking, he cuts it down, making clear he will spare the witness. At last, he gives his full attention to the waiting monster, Jordani. Rokiro says they're now about to have a little fun. Jordani laughs, his forked tongue flicking out with cruel anticipation. He loudly declares that his incredible power is a gift from the true god. His body shifts again as horns sprout from his demonic head. Crouched low to the ground, he is a shadowy beast ready to pounce. He lets out a guttural roar and bolts forward at an impossible, blurring speed. Rokiro steels himself for the massive high-speed impact. A single punch from the creature obliterates the entire area where it had been standing. Rokiro has already dodged, vaulting away from the destructive blast. The shockwave shatters tables and barrels into splinters. Pushing off a wooden pillar, he escapes the path of destruction. The blow's raw force smashes the floorboards into pieces. Landing gracefully, he gauges the raw power of Jordani's god. The monster growls as Rokiro admits he has believed in the wrong god. The katana in his hand suddenly ignites, the blade wrapped in brilliant white-hot flames. Tonight he will offer a monster's head to his goddess. Now his feet burn with the same divine fire as he charges forward. Demonic Jordani grits his teeth and braces for the fiery assault. A blazing sword strike destroys the monstrous Jordani in a fiery explosion. Lyra and Pina watch in shock as the battle ends in devastation. Flames lick at the windows of the wooden building. Flames rapidly consume the structure in a huge, roaring fire. From the fire rises a terrifying demonic face made of black smoke. Wide-eyed and disbelieving, Lyra stares at the smoky, horrifying apparition. Smoke spirals into the sky, leaving the two girls speechless. A man's voice urgently asks where the sudden scream came from. Captain Lyon arrives and demands to know about the fire, suspecting Lyra. An earthen wall crumbles, revealing the scene behind it. Rokiro steps forward and shows the captured arsonist to a surprised Lyon. Grinning triumphantly, he announces he has caught the culprit. Lyon insists on questioning everyone despite a woman's protest. Pina steps forward and says Rokiro and Lyra were helping her. She admits frankly that her saviors could be crazy. Pina gratefully says they are good people she owes everything to. Rokiro and Lyra give her a warm, grateful smile and a reply. Lyon sighs wearily, overwhelmed by the chaos. He takes command and tells his team to He asks the tired trio to come with him for more questioning. As he walks, Rokiro inspects his new, unfinished katana. A mysterious man in a suit watches them from the balcony above. Examining a pill, he decides the medicine is too poor quality for his plans. He decides improvements are necessary before any large-scale field use. Rokiro's keen senses detect the hidden surveillance. Glancing back, he tries to find the source of the feeling. Lyra asks what is wrong, but Rokiro shrugs it off as nothing. Now the mysterious man is here, and his observation seems to be over. Pina notices Rokiro's fatigue as the man reveals his injuries. She gasps and casts a healing spell on his arm. The narrative highlights Lyra's staff and the powerful goddess's Kakura. In a memory, younger Lyra stands proud after finding the artifact alone. Wide shot sets the scene for the royal capital. Rokiro and Lyra arrive at a modest blacksmith's workshop. Pina steps out of the doorway when she hears them arrive. Rokiro greets her, impressed by how quickly she got back to work. Various blacksmithing tools fill the inside of the workshop. A kind man says he is Pina's guardian. He's worried about Pina after her father's death. The guardian bows and expresses deep gratitude for saving her. He encourages them to relax and enjoy themselves. They note the guardian's kindness in Pina's new workshop. Pina's offer to reforge his katana grabs Rokiro's attention. She outlines how golem and monster materials are used in forging. Confidently, she offers to build any weapon if they provide the materials. Then Pina asked what brought them there. Rokiro remembers why he came to the workshop. He offers a large pouch of money to pay for the sword. Stunned, Pina asks how he got such a large sum. Lyra playfully tells Pina not to ask where the money came from. Pina cheerfully invites them to come back anytime as they leave. Lyra's mood suddenly darkens as they walk away. She confronts Rokiro about using money stolen from the thugs. She insists they start earning money the right way. Lyra is worried about the growing list of dangerous responsibilities they have. She challenges Rokiro, saying he seems overwhelmed by everything. Confidently, he reassures her and tells her to follow his lead. Lyra appears moved and flustered by his bold declaration. Smiling warmly, she quietly thanks him. Inwardly, she decides his protection alone will not be enough. Determined to keep up with his training, she vows to get stronger fast. Two massive armored figures suddenly block their path. The garrison knights hurry past them with urgent purpose. Rokiro calls out, demanding to know what's happening. A knight warns them that monsters roam the road and urges them to come inside. The situation seems suspicious because monsters are rare here. They decide to investigate and move toward the commotion to look for clues. They hurry down a path away from the capital walls. Lyra is shocked by the scene while Rokiro is thrilled. Two massive armored bears fight a squadron of knights. Rokiro recognizes Captain Lyon among the soldiers fighting. Alone, Lyon faces one of the monstrous bears head-on. Lyra voices concern, while Rokiro insists on watching the fight. She reprimands Rokiro for being rude and showing no concern for the captain. Rokiro's casual ignorance about Lyon's fame throws Lyra off. A nearby knight tells of Lyon's noble lineage and selfless dedication. The soldier declares passionately that Lyon is the continent's strongest swordsman. A soldier tends his wound, while Rokiro listens with interest. Rokiro quietly reflects on the impressive title of Sword Saint. The armored bear unleashes a deafening roar and charges at Lyon. Lyon stands motionless, his hand on his sword's hilt. Calm and steady, his face shows unwavering concentration. A bright flash erupts as the massive bear charges. Lyon's hand becomes a blur as he draws his blade with impossible speed. Suddenly he drops into a low stance, his attack already finished. Lyra is bewildered, trying to make sense of the flash of light where they stand. Smiling, Rokiro declares the battle is already over. Lyra watches in confusion, unable to understand his words. The massive armored bear collapses with a fatal gash across its torso. Lyon stands ready as the dark energy from his powerful strike fades. His soldiers cheer as Lyra looks amazed, and Rokiro reacts with quiet, analytical approval. The second bear's rampage is sending knights flying with its massive strength. Rokiro calmly notes the soldiers can't handle it. With a determined look, he announces he will take over. Leaping into battle, he becomes a blur against the huge monster. He mocks the beast, saying its armor is useless against him. A swipe from the bear's claws just misses, tearing his robes as he dodges. The creature's powerful swipe sends Rokiro flying through the air. Landing gracefully, he acknowledges the creature's impressive strength. Leaping high, he vows to match Lyon and end it with a single blow. Rokiro admits his rival's skill, pointing out Lyon down the beast with one blow. Feet planted firmly in the dirt, he prepares to face the second monster. Determination steals him as he faces the charging colossal armored bear. His eyes narrow to slits of unwavering focus before he launches his attack. With a flash of steel, his katana slices cleanly through the monster's massive torso. Standing over the dissolving corpse, he says the fight felt refreshing. He throws his head back and laughs triumphantly, saying he can do anything if he tries. Lyon and Lyra watch everything, and Lyra calls him the craziest samurai. Lyon steps up to Rokiro and sincerely thanks him for his invaluable help during the battle. Rokiro smiles slyly and downplays the praise, saying Lyon didn't really need help. Submitting a formal request, he ensures Lyon's men are rewarded by the guild. Mission complete, Lyon leads his troops away, while Lyra waves the document happily. Rokiro quietly thinks his purpose in this world might be to fight Lyon. Meanwhile, Lyon feels an inexplicable pull toward the mysterious, dangerous swordsman. Two warriors walk parallel paths and are destined to cross swords one day. Their quiet acceptance of a looming conflict hangs between them. The scene shifts to a busy town where adventurers stroll along a wooden balcony. In the crowded guild hall, a group notices many people are here to turn in quests. A boisterous man raises his tankard and leads the room in a loud, joyful cheer. Amidst the revelry, Lyra watches the chaotic scene with a quiet, thoughtful expression. Rokiro notices her silence and asks if she is hungry. She playfully teases him, and he clearly sees her jealous look. Now that she has seen this side of the world up close, Lyra admits she is envious. She thinks about how people spend their lives desperately chasing a single moment of celebration. She envies the short, fragile, and reckless way humans live. Her companion finds her philosophical take on the matter strange. Rokiro smiles, reminding her that these small pleasures are the reward of their efforts. He tells her to stop watching and to eat, drink, and enjoy herself. She nods with a warm, genuine smile, agreeing with his words. A battle-worn man in armor greets them as they reach the reception desk. The bunny-eared receptionist is glad Rokiro has found work. Recognizing the garrison captain's letter, she notes how far he has traveled. A nobleman makes a grand entrance and asks the filthy adventurers for pardon. The adventurer sighs, exasperated by the newcomer's arrogant attitude. The nobleman wrinkles his nose and complains the guild hall smells like a pigsty. Relieved, he says he's in a good mood after finally finding the person he was looking for. In a romantic moment, he takes Lyra's hand and introduces himself. Offering a polite greeting, he keeps his eyes fixed on her. Lyra falls silent when he announces he will be her future fiancé. Standing over the dead bear, he says the same polite things to her again. He says again that he intends to marry her, his smile steady. Leaning closer, he tells her she's quite beautiful. Another hand grips his wrist firmly before he can touch her further. Rokiro steps in, coldly telling the man he seems to lack basic manners. Scoffing, the nobleman is clearly amused by the sudden interruption and aggressive stance. Questioning Rokiro's attitude, he adopts an irritated expression. In a condescending tone, he asks if the naive man knows who he is talking to. A dramatic flourish accompanies his introduction as Christophe Fontaine. News of the Fontaine family spreads through the crowd, and people recognize them as nobles. With a smug smile, Christophe confirms he is the eldest son of the powerful Duke of Fontaine. Even after the revelation, Rokiro, Lyra, and the receptionist remain completely unimpressed. Lyra speaks up defiantly and says she doesn't care about his family name. When she dismisses his title, the crowd snickers and Christophe is annoyed. He sees her assertiveness as fitting for a nobleman's wife. He says his father has chosen her to be his wife. Rokiro questions how sudden the arrangement is and asks why Lyra was chosen. Christophe dismisses him, saying it's a political issue and doesn't concern him. Lyra stares back, her face hardening as she refuses outright. Christophe is completely baffled and wonders why she would refuse him. Insisting she will be with him, he speaks in a demanding tone. Leaning casually against Lyra, Rokiro says he's not interested in the matter. Lyra taunts Christophe, saying she's only interested in weak men like him. The nobleman's face tightens in fury as he demands to know if she is calling him weak. Lyra says calmly that she finds him extremely composed. Rokiro gives Christophe a condescending pat on the shoulder and tells him to give up and go home. Onlookers murmur in disbelief that anyone would treat a nobleman like that. Christophe seethed, having never been so ridiculed in his entire life. Pointing an accusing finger, he angrily challenges them to a duel outside. Rokiro brushes him off as a fool and tells him to back off. He says he would not take a life without a valid reason. Lyra interrupts, stopping Rokiro before he can walk away. She vows not to be a weak person who hides behind the strength of others. Fueled by fierce determination, she accepts the challenge and vows to expose his true weakness. Stepping into the courtyard, she prepares to confront Christophe and his two guards. A crowd gathers as Rokiro calmly reassures a worried onlooker that Lyra will be fine. He points out that despite appearances, Lyra has a wild spirit. The receptionist wearing bunny ears watches, puzzled by his description of her. Lyra stands in the courtyard holding a small bottle, preparing for the fight ahead. Gripping her long staff, she wears a determined, focused expression. Ready for battle, she says they can start now. Smirking, Christophe is amused by her spirit as he draws his elegant rapier. She will be worth the effort to train for this duel, he says. With a mocking flourish, he lets her go first. Poised, Lyra plants her heeled boot firmly on the cobblestones. Taking his offer, she dashes forward in an explosive burst of speed. Christophe's eyes widen in shock as he realizes how fast she is. He barely lifts his rapier in time to parry her powerful straight thrust. A shockwave from the blow slams through him, and he grunts in pain. Stumbling backward, he drops to one knee from the full force of her attack. One of his guards shouts his name in alarm at the sudden turn of events. He rises, brushing off the stumble as a brief lapse in focus. From the sidelines, Rokiro and the crowd cheer loudly for her strong thrust. He admires her sharp tongue and is glad she didn't give up so easily. Wearing a renewed predatory grin, he says he will take the initiative now. Charging forward, he aims his rapier and starts his attack. Lyra's training pays off when she can clearly see his movements. Using her staff, she deflects his lunge, their weapons colliding loudly. Locked in a fluid duel, the two trade blows, parries, and dodges. The exchange ends with Kristoff suddenly dropping to his knees, clutching his arm in pain. Calmly watching from the side, Rokiro announces the game is over. Standing over the defeated nobleman, Lyra tells him firmly that he is weak. She advises him to accept his defeat and live humbly from now on. Kristoff's sweat-soaked face twists with rage and deep humiliation. A child's voice breaks the tense silence, urging his mother to hurry along. A boy dashes past an angry nobleman, his mother trailing close behind with a basket. The boy stumbles and falls to the ground, then looks up at Kristoff, whose expression darkens. Seeing this, Rokiro and Lyra share a sudden, grave look of concern. Terrified, a child looks up from the cobblestones at a sword looming over him. Malice twists Kristoff's face as he lifts the blade and calls the boy a rude brat. Rokiro's sharp command cuts through the air, telling him to stop. A warning is given about what will happen if that sword comes down. The swordsman vows Kristoff's head will fall before his blow connects. Kristoff freezes mid-motion, eyes wide with shocked disbelief and a hint of fear. His mother rushes forward, scoops him into her arms, and apologizes repeatedly. Quickly, she carries her son away from the dangerous confrontation. Kristoff stands up and tells Lyra he has changed his mind about marrying her. Instead, he vows to carve a permanent scar across her face and declares a duel to the death. Lyra's expression hardens as she says she has changed her mind too. Because he tried to kill a child, she vows to show him no mercy. Kristoff screams manically and lunges, his face a mask of vengeful fury. Lyra's eye catches the incoming attack, a bead of sweat tracing her temple. A furious clash of weapons forces Lyra onto the defensive. Noticing his increased speed, she can still follow his movements. Confident he will soon break through her guard, Kristoff taunts her for only defending. Rokiro, on the sidelines, calmly encourages her to let her eyes adjust to the new pace. Rokiro's training memory shows how a frustrated opponent exposes an opening. Lyra endures the attack calmly, a small cut now visible on her cheek. Rokiro's lesson stays with her, reminding her not to miss her chance. In a moment of overconfidence, Kristoff lunges to grab her. Lyra skillfully ducks under his arm, taking the opening he gave her. She turns his momentum against him and puts him completely off balance. He feigns surrender, but his ruse comes far too late. She slams the heavy pommel of her staff into his face with brutal force. The blast knocks Kristoff's head back, pain shooting through him. At that moment, Garrison Captain Lyon arrives and declares the fight over. He says a duel without a proper witness is not a real duel. Lyra listens as he sternly calls her actions a public lynching. A crewman seizes the fallen Kristoff and warns Lyra to remember the captain's words. Later in the town square, Lyon formally addresses Rokiro in front of the crowd. He charges the swordsman with keeping the spirited Lyra in check. Rokiro gives a subtle, knowing smirk and a silent nod to the request. The trio pauses briefly amid the square's lively activity. Now the scene moves to a quiet path overlooking the town's quaint rooftops. Lyra asks if she fought well, and Rokiro replies that she did very well for her first time. Despite seeing his torn clothes, she asks him to go with her somewhere first. Seeing his attention drift, she asks whether he's listening to her. Rokiro's eyes narrow as he calls into the empty street for their follower to come forward. He says they've been followed since the square, which confuses Lyra. An armored figure peeks hesitantly from behind the corner of a building. The young woman in armor steps forward and quietly apologizes for intruding. Dropping into a deep, formal bow, she asks to be taken on as his apprentice. Lyra is stunned by the request, and Rokiro smiles, amused. At the training ground, Rokiro looks exasperated, thinking how things ended up like this. The young woman stands ready and tells him she is prepared when he is. Respectfully and eagerly, she asks Master Rokiro to teach her well. Rokiro silently blames Lyra, calling her a fool for dumping this responsibility on him. In a flashback, Lyra is surprised by the unexpected idea of an apprentice. Rokiro laughed and joked he could open his own dojo. Humbly, Lyra said she was still open to learning. She started to doubt why the young woman wanted to get stronger. Lyra gently reminded him that the aspiring warrior was still just a child. Amelia introduced herself formally as a 14-year-old apprentice adventurer. Her parents had died, leaving her to care for her sick younger brother. Amelia described the hardships she faced working as a porter to afford his medicine. She said the monsters have become more ferocious recently and nearly killed her. In desperation, the girl said her brother could not survive if she died. Emily pleaded that this was why she had to get stronger. Lyra realized the girl was yet another victim of the world's abnormal situation. Amelia watched with hope as Lyra acknowledged the situation and took responsibility. Despite Rokiro's doubt, Lyra knew she had to help the brave girl. Lyra gave a sly look, clapped a hand on Rokiro's shoulder, and made her decision. Cheerfully, she told him she was leaving Emily in his care, which shocked him. Back in the present, Rokiro sighs and notes Amelia's determined spirit. He agrees to a special one-day training session, and she accepts it cheerfully. However, he warns her he will judge her potential today. The master, katana drawn, invites his new student to attack him. Amelia charges forward, sounding nervous but determined, ready for the test. Rokiro easily deflects her first clumsy, fear-driven sword strike. Swinging her shield wildly, she leaves her whole body exposed to a counter. Rokiro effortlessly evades, as her movements stay frantic and uncontrolled. He decides her fear is too great, and he cannot train her like this. Believing it's for her own good, he decides to scare her a little so she'll give up. His blade flashes, but her shield unexpectedly and completely blocks it. Rokiro is left completely speechless, his mind racing to process what just happened. Grabbing her by the shoulders, he demands to know how she blocked his attack. In the clearing, Rokiro presses his student for an answer. Amelia shares his confusion and is unsure she did it. He wonders whether her impressive defensive move was completely unconscious. He notices the small, worn shield in her hand. Rokiro notes how worn the shield looks for a new apprentice's gear. Amelia smiles and explains that the shield isn't really hers. She reveals that it was a cherished gift from her mother to her father, and he loved it. Listening closely, Rokiro realizes it is a precious keepsake. Just then, Lyra arrives at the training ground and calls out a cheerful greeting. Amelia greets her warmly, and Rokiro stays lost in thought, watching his student. Lyra stands with her hands on her hips and asks how the training is going. Rokiro ignores her, points straight at Amelia, and tells her the sword is a hindrance. Misreading his intense focus, Lyra assumes the training is going well. He tells Amelia she can defend herself without thinking. He advises her to block with her shield while counterattacking with a different weapon. Rokiro hands Amelia a dagger and suggests she try a new fighting style. Accepting the weapon, she looks both surprised and curious. At the side, Lyra watches, completely captivated, her face a mask of awe. The new technique is working. Amelia's shield appears to block Rokiro's attacks by itself. Rokiro ends the training after several successful exchanges. Praising her, he says the style suits her, but will require more stamina. She can now earn a living with continued practice, he tells her. Emily, moved by emotion, expresses deep gratitude for his guidance. Determined to repay them, she accepted Lyra's suggestion to have dinner. Beaming with pride, Amelia confidently says she is an excellent cook. 3 companions make their way through the poor slums of the royal capital. Amelia apologizes that her neighborhood does not look very nice. Lyra gently reassures her, saying she doesn't need to worry about their surroundings. Back home, she calls out to check if her brother Kyle is awake. A young boy welcomes his sister home and is surprised by her guests. Proudly, Amelia introduces Rokiro and Lyra to Kyle as her new masters. Excitement lights the boy's face as he asks whether they are adventurers. Lyra and Rokiro are touched by the warm welcome and find the scene amazing. Beside a steaming pot of stew, Lyra mentions Kyle's dream of becoming an adventurer. Amelia confirms this, saying their parents were adventurers who inspired him. She fondly remembers them, telling stories about the monsters they fought each day. Rokiro asks Amelia if she is also interested in fighting. After dinner, he offers to tell the eager children stories about his own battles. Lyra teases them by calling their discussion men only. Later that night, a full moon hangs over the quiet stone rooftops. Alone outside, Rokiro looks up at the night sky, lost in thought. Lyra adds that exhausted Kyle is now fast asleep. Noticing his somber mood, she asks what is wrong. Rokiro looks up and notices the moon is different from those in his worlds. Lyra gently reminds him that, after all, he is in another world. His gaze sharpens as he says the fundamental reality is the same everywhere. He describes selfish, powerful people who hoard wealth and indulge in pleasure. Lyra continues, lamenting that the honest and weak always suffer. Sadness shows on her face as she accepts the truth, but she is still troubled. Rokiro voices disgust at the injustice, and Lyra quietly agrees. A panic shout from inside shatters their quiet moment of reflection. They rush in and find Kyle convulsing, with Amelia crying that she's out of medicine. Rokiro steps forward, telling Amelia to move aside so he can tend to the boy. Lyra urgently asks a frantic Amelia if she knows where to get more medication. Amelia, pale with fear, confirms she knows a place. Lyra tells her to hurry because she is the only one who knows the way. Amelia runs urgently through the dark, empty cobblestone streets. A desperate escape brings her to the closed door of a nearby pharmacy. Banging on the door, she shouts that she needs medicine right away. An irritated pharmacist opens the door and demands to know why she is there so late. He eyes her suspiciously and asks if she has any money. A few meager coins clink pitifully in her palm as she offers them. The pharmacist scoffs and says her money is far from enough. He says coldly that his shop is not a charity and turns her away. At that moment, a new group arrives, and their leader spots the pharmacy. Christophe, the newcomer, casually mentions finding a nearby pharmacy. Announcing he needs painkillers, he decides to buy the entire stock. Stunned by the large order, the pharmacist stares while Amelia looks on in disbelief. Ignoring Amelia's plight, the pharmacist flatters his new wealthy customer. Christophe turns to the distraught family, his gaze cold. He holds up a single bottle of medicine and asks if she needs it. Hope lights her eyes as she says it's all she needs. He cruelly drops the bottle, watching it shatter on the ground. Christophe laughs with a manic edge as Amelia collapses, overwhelmed by despair. Whispering in anguish, she asks how he could be so cruel. Feigning innocence with a wide grin, he says it slipped from his hand. He offers her a deal, promising to be compassionate if she cooperates. He confirms Rokiro and Lyra are at her house now. His monstrous plan is revealed, and he asks her to help him kill them. Emily walks into the darkness as if the choice had been made for her. He orders her to poison them and meet him at a specific location. Pressing a violin into her hand, he reinforces his threat by invoking his family name. She crushes the vial in her hand, knowing her brother will die otherwise. Back at the house, Kyle lies in bed, sweating and breathing hard. Amelia rushed in and apologized for being late. Lyra and Rokiro feel relieved, but still worried about whether Kyle will be okay. Lyra makes clear her healing magic only eases symptoms and cannot cure illnesses. Holding up the medicine she got, Emily announces her success. Later, Kyle sleeps peacefully, and Lyra sighs with relief. Amelia softly touches her sleeping brother's face, her expression calm. At last, Lyra feels they are out of the woods for now. Rokiro and she thank Amelia, crediting Kyle's recovery to God's grace. Amelia offers to bring them a drink to thank them for all their trouble. She pours drinks as Lyra thanks Amelia for her help. She returns carrying a tray with 2 wooden mugs for her guests. Thanking her again, Lyra says it would have been much harder alone. Rokiro and Lyra both sip the drinks Amelia prepared. Among them, Amelia sits with her face hidden and her thoughts unreadable. Rokiro tells her to take Kyle to a qualified doctor in the morning. He explains that it was his intention when he agreed to train her. Amelia suddenly uses the excuse that the equipment needs maintenance. Smiling oddly, she asks them to watch Kyle for a moment. A tired Lyra agrees and tells her to be careful as she leaves. Alone, Amelia leans against a door with a conflicted expression. Holding a dagger, she remembers her dead parents. Doubt creeps in as she prepares her gear. Seeing no other option, she straps the dagger to her thigh. She asks her parents to watch over her and walks into the night. Arriving at the former training ground, she reaches the designated meeting spot. Christophe greets her with a smug look and points out she came alone. He cuts to the chase and asks whether she gave the poison. Confirming this, she says her brother will get better now. Christophe scoffs, saying he doesn't care about her brother's condition. He lifts a small dark object and asks about the two. Amelia throws the vial down defiantly and says she could never betray them. A young nobleman crushes a small object beneath his boot in a dusty courtyard. Kristoff scoffs, muttering dismissively about the so-called pride of the poor. Amelia, defiant, says she would rather die fighting than live a life of cowardice. Furious, the injured nobleman questions whether she dares to call him a coward. Angrily, he vows she will regret making an enemy of the powerful Fontaine family. Kristoff sits and calmly orders his foreguards to teach her a lesson. Uniformed men close in on the lone young woman, their swords drawn. A focused guard raises his sword to deliver a powerful strike. Amelia clearly sidesteps her attacker's first heavy downward slash. With surprising agility, she weaves through the chaotic assault of the four men. A guard lunges forward with his sword pointed at the young fighter. Pivoting quickly, she slams her shield directly into the guard's face. Kristoff watches from his seat as his men struggle against a lone opponent. Jumping to his feet, he shouts and challenges his guard's claimed honor. An officer gives a furious order to stop one-on-one combat and swarm her. Amelia braces and blocks a sharp sword strike with her small round shield. The coordinated, overwhelming assault hits its mark, blades cutting into her body. Gritting her teeth in pain, a fresh bloody wound is visible on her side. A powerful kick sends Amelia sprawling to the ground and knocks her weapons away. A guard looms over her vulnerable form, and she looks up in shock. Shadowed, the guard cracks his knuckles with malicious intent. He looms over her, poised to deliver a brutal, bare-knuckle beating. Holding her down, he starts landing brutal punches. A brutal blow hits her face, her eye wide with shock and pain. Other guards watched the merciless assault, one covering his mouth in unease. The guard keeps brutally attacking the now helpless young woman. The blow lands again, the impact shown in stark, violent detail. His bloodied fist rises, ready to deliver another devastating blow. Kristoff's face wears a cruel, sadistic grin as he demands more violence. Soaring through the night sky, a swordsman holds his katana poised and ready. A blade flashes past Kristoff's face, cutting a thin, stinging line of blood. Rokiro drops into a crouch after taking down several guards in an instant. Kristoff gives a choked gasp of shock and sudden pain. The swordsman says calmly he was simply wondering who was making the noise. Rokiro looks at the nobleman and expresses regret for not killing him sooner. The nobleman's face twists with a mix of terror and helpless rage. Lyra rushes into the bloody scene and calls Amelia's name in alarm. Rokiro quietly promises to patch her up right away. Panicking, Kristoff shouts for his remaining guards to protect him. Rokiro surges forward at impossible speed, a blur of lethal motion. The blade flashes twice and cleanly cuts down the last guard. Rokiro confronts the cowering nobleman and mentions the beating his apprentice suffered. Kristoff whimpers, frozen with fear as the swordsmen loom over him. Rokiro stomps down hard on the defeated man's chest. Lying on the ground, the nobleman is utterly defeated and at his mercy. Rokiro says pain would be a luxury as he pronounces a death sentence. Sharp projectiles streak through the air toward the swordsman. The attack is blocked, stopping Rokiro's killing blow as sparks fly. Fed up, Lyra watches the chaos her companions always cause. Lyon arrives, scolding Rokiro for showing no respect for the law. A member of Lyon's team points out magic is being used illegally against civilians. Lyon formally arrests Kristoff Fontaine for multiple crimes. Relieved, the arrested nobleman murmurs that he has been saved. Lyon surveys the bloody aftermath of the one-sided battle in silence. He mutters under his breath that the swordsman has clearly gone too far this time. Lyra confronts Lyon at once and demands to know what he is doing. He insists that killing a man like Kristoff is for the good of the country. Lyon calls Kristoff scum and insists letting him live will only cause more harm. Lyra demands to know what authority gives him the right to decide who lives. She sarcastically asks whether it's right to murder someone just because you don't like them. Lyon gives a quiet, resigned apology for his harsh, practical words. Amelia apologizes, saying she thought she could handle it but only made things worse. Rokiro comforts her, saying she did nothing wrong and fought well. He blames the country for her struggle. Lyon's face softens, accepting the grim truth in Rokiro's words. The captain refocuses on the investigation at the scene. A knight says he found a suspicious item in suspect Kristoff's pocket. Lyon inspects a vial of black pills and confirms the Fontaine family's involvement. Lyra recognizes the drug and ties it to the monstrous thug Jordani. Growing horror makes her suspect the Fontaines are behind everything. Lyon rejects the vial, saying it is not enough proof on its own. He warns Lyra to stay away from the dangerous case, but she insists they're already too deep. Lyra remembers the resurrected cobalt and how Jordani changed after taking the drug. Lyon ties the drug to the mysterious black mist with a strange dying cry. He says they must get answers from the suspect they just caught. However, he tells the stunned liar that questioning him is pointless. Duke Fontaine's political pressure will secure his son's release, he explains. Outraged, Lyra questions the point of laws that do not apply to the nobility. Lyon gazes at the distant castle, quietly sharing her sentiment. His thoughts reveal the deeply tangled roots of the Fontaine family's corruption. He laments the alarmingly few trustworthy allies he can rely on. A vision reveals Duke Fontaine claiming control of the palace and the capital. However, Lyon says calmly and firmly that a way forward still exists. Walking a desolate path, he tells Rokiro the country is rotten to the core. He says it's foolish to mourn something beyond repair. That night, he suggests Rokiro destroy the corrupt nation. Rokiro spins and declares, with fierce resolve, that they will seize the country. Lyon is completely stunned by his companion's sudden, terrifying resolve.